Kendra, welcome to the sisterhood. It's so good to have you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so where are you, Kendra? What state are you in?
I'm in North Carolina. I'm in Greensboro, which is like basically the dead center of the state. Yeah, I've lived here my whole life. Never lived anywhere else. Isn't that crazy?
Really? Never.
No. I mean, I like did a stint of 18 months in a college 30 minutes away, but I don't count that. And my husband then boyfriend was still in Greensboro, so I was here a lot anyway. So I've never left. I love this place.
Mm.
Oh, that's so funny. I once met someone from Greensboro at a soccer tournament. And
Mm.
then from then on, I pretended when I was at soccer tournaments that I was from Greensboro, North Carolina. With a Southern accent, literally. Hi, I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Do I
Uh,
need to? My accent is a lot thicker if I'm around my family, like my extended family who's more Southern than I am. If I'm around them for a lot longer, the thickness gets there for
Oh,
sure.
okay. Well, I'm envious. I've always been envious since my young days of the Southern drawl. I just thought it was
Okay, so
so
Krista,
funny.
how old were you when this was happening? Because I'm sure our listeners are like, were you 16 or was this last month? I don't.
Well, no, it was during my glory days of soccer in
When you
high
were playing
school.
soccer,
Yes,
not when
we'd
you were on
go.
the sidelines.
Okay.
No, it's like when we would go to these soccer tournaments and I wanted to be someone else and
Mhm.
think trick all the cute boys at the soccer tournaments that I was actually a Southern girl. So
Right.
yeah, no, it was then.
Okay, I
Anyway,
just felt like we
Greensboro.
needed to clarify
I've
that this
actually
was not
never
last month
yeah,
that you were pretending.
I've actually never met anyone from Greensboro. So this is what's bringing it back home right now. This is so
I
fun.
am so into that anecdote. It is so great. I love
The
it.
alter ego is coming out. Okay, Kendra, why don't you tell us a little bit about your, I don't know if you'd call it a nickname. What do you call it?
Mm.
A
What would
moniker?
I, a moniker? Maybe moniker? I know that feels sort of strange, doesn't it? In my alter ego.
Hmm.
Um, so I am the lazy genius, which is such a weird thing to say sometimes. It's great when someone will recognize me in like Target or whatever, and they're like, "Are you the lazy genius?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yes." Also, my name is Kendra. Hello, it is nice to meet you. But no, I created the Lazy Genius space because I wanted to give permission and an invitation for women to be a genius about what matters to them and then be lazy about what doesn't. That there's so many mixed messages on what it means for us to live well, especially as women, and it's too much to carry for one person. It's way too much. And so if we don't choose what matters to us and then take steps, exactly what you all do, and then take steps towards that specific thing, we're just going to be so tired all the time. So that is
Mhm.
what it means to be a lazy genius. I call myself the original lazy genius, but I'm trying to like teach other people to be lazy
Hmm.
geniuses too.
Yeah, because I joined your Facebook community
Oh,
just
cool.
like, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago or so.
Mhm.
And now I get all these tips on Facebook. People are asking, and so they use it as a verb. How
It's
do
a
you
verb now.
lazy genius this? How do you lazy genius this problem?
Yeah.
So, why don't you explain to us what that means when people say, how do you lazy genius this?
I think it all starts with for sure what matters, but it starts with how you think about it, what the reason is behind why you're doing this thing. But also there is an element of being a lazy genius where it's not that everything is easy. It's not like trying to collect life hacks or that everything is a shortcut. It's more like perspective on, all right, if this thing matters, what are some resources or some principles? Because I wrote a book that has 13 principles to actually help you lazy genius anything. So, what are some things that I can do to make this thing that I've chosen to matter actually function and stay a priority in my life? And then how can I kind of forget about the other things? But it's so lovely to, I think you guys would resonate with this. There's something really lovely about having a community of people who lead different lives perhaps, but that there's sort of a language, a shared language around things like priorities and what matters. And so that's why I love that Lazy Genius community, is because they have a shared language. They have different lives and different priorities, but that's part of being a human in this world. And so having that language of what it means to lazy genius something, basically it's like, I don't want to put more energy into this than I have to, or I don't want to like be so bombarded by the pressure to do this thing well, or be overwhelmed by something that actually doesn't matter to me. You guys help me see it. And also there's too much kitty litter in my house. How do I lazy genius the kitty litter? Like it's all the different things. It's kind of funny, but that's why I love the community so much and living this way so much, because it applies to everyone in everything, really.
Mm-hmm. It's really a crowdsourcing kind of thing. And I really love it. I
They're
think
real
it's,
smart in there. There are like so
yeah.
many great ideas in there. It's great.
There are. I mean, I now know where to go when I need help with something.
Yeah.
Um, okay, can you talk to us about just decision making in general? When women are trying to make decisions and are overwhelmed, I will tell you, I am a person who gets overwhelmed by decision making. And probably there are personalities. I think there are, because I observe other women. I'm like, wow, she just decided that and moved on. She didn't have to think about every possible option and outcome. And I'm also married to somebody who kind of thinks that way, where we think about everything.
Mm.
So we don't make real quick decisions, but we make real thoughtful ones.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you help people, maybe like me, make decisions so that they can move forward?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think the first thing that I would say is to do what it sounds like you're already doing, which is to sort of name how you make decisions and not shame yourself for that, that it's different from someone else's. Like some people make decisions more slowly and more thoughtfully. That's not bad. Some people make them quickly and decisively. That's not bad. Like they're neither are better than another. There might be some situations where your particular way of making a decision matches up with that scenario a little bit better, like if you have to make a quick decision just because of the scenario, but you're a slower decision maker, that can feel stressful. But I think what we do is we translate that stress, that decision making stress, into sort of a referendum on how we make decisions. And like, well, I don't know how to make decisions well. It's like, no, it's just that your style isn't necessarily like holding hands super well with this decision, but that doesn't mean how you think about decisions is bad. We're all different people. So I definitely, one of the principles in my book is being kind to yourself. And I think that decision making is a really great place to be kind to ourselves, because there are so many decisions to make all of the time, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed and name the overwhelm that something is wrong with us, rather than just like they're just a lot of decisions. So to kind of release that, I think, is the first thing. The second thing, and this is another principle in the book, and I feel like this is such a magical principle, and it is called decide once. So there are so many, like you said, there's just so many decisions that we make, but there are a lot of them that we make over and over and over and over again. And then we run out of energy to make decisions around things that actually matter when it's time to do that. And so the idea of deciding once is just choosing some things, or just one thing. Start small with one thing. Choose one thing that you can decide one time and then never again, as long as that decision serves you well. Obviously, we're going to, evolve, and life changes and seasons of life and all that. But as long as it's serving you, keep it. So a couple of the quick examples would be like, I wear a Monday uniform. I wear the same clothes every Monday because Mondays are like hard. And so I just don't have to think about what I'm going to wear. We will eat the same foods. We have pasta every Monday. We have pizza every Friday. It's just done. So that's like whatever fraction percentage of the week that is in meal planning. It's done. Like they're thinking about like the holidays coming up. I love to give people books. It's just decide the category of like, I'm going to decide one time, then I'm going to get everybody in my life that I love. I'm going to get everybody book and book related things for the holidays this year or whatever. And then it just limits the number of decisions you have to make, and also the pool of information that you make it from. And it's like such a gift. It's so great. So that's like my favorite decision-making thing. It's just to decide once and then never again. It's great.
So like, what
how
was last year's book? I'm curious. What did you do last year for everybody? Because we won't say
So
this year in case someone listens who you're going to give a gift to.
right. So for example, I don't necessarily always give everybody the same book. It's more like this person, I want to get a book that this person will like. But one thing that I do, and I have done this for the last 2 or 3 years, is every Christmas, for my kids' teachers who are primarily I've only had one male teacher that my kids have had, but I always get them the book Cozy Minimalist Home by Michael and Smith, because I feel like it is the only home decorating book that any human ever needs. I'm obsessed with it so much. And it's such a permission giving book. It doesn't have anything to do with the person's style, but it's a path to making your home feel the way that you want it to feel. It's like tools, and it's so pretty. And so I always give that to like every single teacher, and they all love it. And then when it's on sale, like it was on sale, I'm staring at a stack of 5 copies right now, because whenever it's on sale, I'm like, ooh, let's buy some, because I know I'm going to give it. I know I'm going to give it away. And so it's like, it makes it so easy.
Yeah, and I will attest to that book because I pulled it out this summer when we were redoing some things in our house, because I was having decision fatigue, and
Yeah.
she walked me through, like, this is how you make a decision on a rug, because I don't know how to make decisions on rugs. So if you feel like decisions are hard for you and home decorating, both double whammy,
Right.
that's the book for you.
It is. It's so great.
Okay, so you said until it's not working for you any longer. How do you know? Because sometimes we get stuck in a rut and we get stuck in a pattern that we think, yeah, this is working for me. And it almost takes somebody from outside of our life, somebody with a little bit of an objective eye, to say, why are you doing that? Or why are you doing it that way?
Yeah.
How do you know when it is time to make a change?
I love that you said it takes someone outside, because I think that's totally true. I think the time that you know it's time to make a change is if you feel like, however you experience frustration, if you're just paying attention to, why am I always annoyed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, what's happening? What's going on? Like, just sort of stepping back for yourself and sort of naming like where some pain points are, or um, a drawer that was once serving you super well, and it was like, not that it was organized, but it had what it was supposed to have in it. And then suddenly it doesn't anymore. And you're like, why is it when I open this drawer, I'm super duper stressed out? Like, what is happening? It's just very simple acts of paying attention to your regular life, rather than necessarily saying, I'm so frustrated, everything's, falling apart. Let's pull out all the big trash bags and throw away all of our stuff and move into a tiny house. I can't do this anymore. Like, we sort of like swing really, really drastically sometimes when we're frustrated. And so just sort of using that frustration as information, like, what's actually frustrating me. And then I think it's exactly what you said, where you ask a friend or a sister or someone that you trust that does not live in your house with you. It could be someone you live with, but I think it sometimes helps for it to not be that. I think that's why that Facebook community is like so active, because it's other people who don't necessarily know your life, but you can say, okay, so this is what I'm after. This is what matters. And this is what's tripping me up. Any ideas? And it usually takes just like one tiny thing that makes such a huge change. So paying attention to your pain points, and then having somebody look at it with you, I think, and then not expecting it to be a massive change. You don't have to build a big old machine to fix whatever your problem is. It can usually just be like one tiny thing, and then doing that thing and see if it works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, try again.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I was just listening to a TED Talk about how actually we think that we're making decisions solely based on our like thought process, but actually when they saw that like they did a study that said if people had a traumatic brain injury that actually didn't allow them to feel anymore, they actually were paralyzed in decision making. They couldn't literally make a decision. And the reason is because our feelings actually inform way more of our decisions than we think. And that actually, if you take that away, people are no longer able to make decisions. So it is interesting how much our decisions are tied to our feelings, but we don't think that necessarily.
Yeah.
So it is helpful which is why also we have a hard time being objective in our own life. Other people
Absolutely.
outside of our life can say, oh, well, they should do that. But it's easy to say that when you're outside of that own life, but when you're in that life, it's different.
I think about dinner, and how how often do we get to, 4 or 5 and we're like, we're feeling the weight of the end of the day, the stress of the end of the day. We're just tired or whatever. And we don't want to cook. And if there's not a decision that has been made for what dinner is going to be, then we understandably, this is not a shame thing. We usually are just like, let's just order pizza or let's go out or let's fend for yourself, everybody, because we don't have the capacity, like you just said, to make a decision. We're done. Like we can't do it. And so I think that's why sort of thinking ahead about what some of those decisions we can make without it feeling like it doesn't have to be like a straitjacket sort of situation. Like we've already named what matters. Eating the meal probably matters. And so we'll just go ahead and decide earlier. So we don't have to decide later when our emotions are going to impact that decision, not in a good or bad way, but perhaps in a
Mhm.
way that we wouldn't normally intend when we were emotionally full or rested or whatever it is. So that's so fascinating that people
Mhm.
who don't have connection to their feelings can't make emotions. Can't make decisions. That's so
Yeah,
fascinating.
it totally stunned me. I was really into it. Anyway, okay, so there's something I want to talk about from your book. There was a quote I thought was so interesting, and I'm just going to read it. You said in your book, I want to stop judging women who have it together, assuming they have something to hide. And I want to stop applauding chaos as the only indicator of vulnerability. Your struggles and insecurities are not lined up next to mine, pageant style. We need to stop trying to outreal each other. And I feel like coming up on Christmas, this is actually an important concept because I think it's one or the other a lot of times. It's like people either, especially on social media, I would say that's one of the main ways that people communicate. It's either like, I'm a mess and everything's chaos. And so aren't I so real because of that? Or I have everything together. Here's all my gifts lined up 5 weeks in advance. I'm totally done Christmas shopping. And look at my beautifully decorated house that's all done and all the cookies are already baked. So I feel like, you've got these like extremes often that we're seeing in the feed. So talk to me about that quote. I think that is really, really good.
I actually had not thought about that quote specifically in the context of the holidays. And you're right. Like, what a spotlight on our tendency to compare what matters to us to what matters to someone else and make judgments about that. Really, it's always out of, I think, well, maybe not always, but primarily out of our own insecurity that like, have we chosen the wrong things to care about? Or we don't have it together as much as that person and we feel shame about that. Or there are just there's so many things. So I think that the first piece is to release the um, it's almost like we hold other women accountable for actions we have no right to hold them accountable for. Like if, you know what I'm saying? Like if they're like if we are feeling out of sorts with the
Mhm.
holidays and maybe we're behind or we still haven't figured out we're waiting for COVID numbers to know if we can even get together or not at all. And so we're
Mhm.
just sort of in a holding pattern, right? Someone else is not in a holding pattern and everything, quote, nothing, everything is, but it's done.
Yes.
Everything that we see that they're showing us is done. And so what we do is out of our own perhaps sadness or shame or frustration or confusion about what actually matters to us or fatigue if you've got like tiny tiny kids at home, or maybe this is like the first year that your kids have like been out of the house, it's like your first year as an empty nester and then they're coming back and it's like, wait, how's this going to be? It's different than it was before. And we have all these things, sort of all these questions swirling around, all these decisions really in so many ways to make. And we see someone else who seems to have made their decisions so well, so organized with a beautiful color palette. And you're like, well, I suck. Great. Like it
Right. Yeah.
just we just compare ourselves. and
Mhm.
and I think we've gotten to a point intuitively as women, because the internet says this a lot. We know to not compare ourselves to each other. Like we know that that's not a valuable exercise. And so I
Mhm.
think in some ways we've taken some good steps in the direction of not doing that. I think where we're still sort of stuck, perhaps, is in this idea of conflating order with being fake. That if
Mhm.
you have it together, if your gifts are done and your house is organized and decorated and you're wearing lipstick, then you're hiding something. You're hiding a deep, dark
Mhm.
secret. You're in debt. Your marriage is in trouble. You're actually secretly unhappy because no one who
Right.
is actually confident in who they are would have a together life, because chaos equals vulnerability. It does not, though. It does not. I'm an incredibly vulnerable person. My house is clean right now. Am I fake?
Mhm.
No. Like, is there any, there's no difference. There's no moral difference. We put such a deep morality on it. We don't need to. That's the thing about the account. Like, we're putting accountability, we're holding people accountable for actions that we have no right to hold them accountable for. Like,
Mm.
there is nothing different about me as a person if I am like right now, I smell like bleach. I haven't showered in 4 days. I'm just like, eat Cheez-Its, guys. I'll see you soon. Like, I don't know. Versus like tomorrow, where my hair will be clean and I'll be wearing makeup and I might put on cute shoes, and like that, those two things are somehow in opposition to each other in the same human. That those two
Mhm.
days cannot exist in the same human being, and they can. So they can for us, they can for the other person. So I back to the holiday piece, I just think so much of it begins in letting people decide what they're going to decide and prioritize what they want to prioritize, and do it early or do it late, or like, it doesn't matter. It has no bearing on the value of your own choices. It just doesn't. And we don't need to hold other people responsible for our own insecurity because they bought their Christmas presents 3 weeks earlier than we did. We don't
Mhm.
have to do that. And then what that does is it allows us to open up, um, that door. See what I did there? Um, to open up towards the women in our lives and
Mhm.
not move
Mhm.
away from them because we don't make decisions the same way, that we can cheer them on, even if we are operating through these next couple of months in significantly different ways, that they don't have to, like I said, they don't have to be judged like a pageant. This is not something that we need to judge in each other. And then it just gives us the
Mhm.
freedom to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to decorate how I want, or I'm going to
Mhm.
shop what I want, or like, you do
Mhm.
what makes sense for you.
I've been writing a lot lately on looking for goodness and what it means to intentionally look for the good in other people, in situations. And I realized when I was writing yesterday that we do the opposite too. We can look at someone, especially on social media, that probably is feeding into our insecurities in that way, and go searching for them so that we can pull them apart because
Mm.
it makes us feel better
Yeah.
in a weird, twisted kind of way. But to check ourselves to say, okay, if I know that it makes me uncomfortable, so I'm probably a person that falls on the highly unorganized end of the spectrum. So when I see somebody who is highly organized, it makes me uncomfortable in that she's not doing this to me, I'm doing this to myself. Somehow I'm not meeting a standard, right? It's that self comparison that we
Mhm.
create in our own heads. So, my job is, if it makes me uncomfortable to have her constantly in my face through my Instagram feed, is to just not follow her. That's my responsibility, instead of intentionally having this weird feeling of, oh no, I'm going to look at her and kind of name all the things that are wrong with this to
Yeah.
make me feel better. So I think we're saying the same thing in just
Yeah.
these different roundabout ways. And
Yeah.
it is
And
interesting. We are talking in this series about being home for the holidays. And so everybody is probably going to be um, kind of broadcasting their lives, if you will, from home. And so, how would you suggest that people who are consuming social
mm,
media do it in a way that makes them feel good about the decisions they've made in their home?
I am so obsessed with the thoughtfulness of that question, because what we think we need in times like this is like tips on how to decorate and stuff, which is great. I mean, and I actually like talking about that stuff and I think that's important. But if you start there rather than starting further back, where the posture of your soul as it is situated towards your own situation and towards the situation of others, it just kind of skews everything if you don't pay attention to that first. So I love that question. Like how can we engage in something that is part of our daily life for so many of us, sometimes hourly life, in a way that is healthy to us, honoring to ourselves, and also honoring to the people's feeds that we're looking at, respecting the humanity both ways. So um I think it's exactly what you said, that if you are feeling, this happens to me often. Um, it happens to me when I'm like super hormonal. It happens to me when I'm in a season of not sleeping well. If my margin is thin, I lack the tools to objectively look at an account that is stirring up my own insecurities. And so by muting or unfollowing someone, it has nothing to do with them. I think one of the reasons I've talked to a lot of women about this topic over the last few months, especially, and one of the things that I hear a lot is like, "Well, I don't want to make them feel bad, or I feel bad for unfollowing them," or like there's this like weird kind of guilt around it. And if you're worried, if it's somebody that you know personally that they're going to see you unfollow them, that's why the mute function is so great, because they don't know that you can't see their account. But it's not about them. Like that's the thing, is it's not that you are passing judgment on this person's choice and what they're sharing. It's that you are recognizing that your own limitations and insecurities and our own propensity to self-protect and not tell ourselves the truth, and which sometimes is harder when we're tired and we're in a trauma of a pandemic and everyone is still home and we don't have margin, or we don't see our people, and we're not able to get energy from the people that like there's so many things that have turned our world upside down, and not just our world, but like how we see the world has been turned upside down. And so giving ourselves permission, but that unfollowing or muting or taking a break or whatever is not some self-righteous act or judgmental act on the part of the person that we're unfollowing. It is simply something that we're doing to tend to our own soul, and just we're just being honest with how we're wired right now, what we're experiencing. And it doesn't have to be bad, and it doesn't mean it has to be forever. And the number of times I'll unfollow and I'm like 2 weeks later I'm like, I'm back. I'm ready. We can do this. So I think that's such an important small step, that can of paying attention. If we just think about Instagram, for example, that you don't have to necessarily like overhaul your entire life and everything that you see ever, like just to start small with like how you interact with Instagram, paying attention to how you feel when you see certain accounts. That as you pay attention, that is a muscle that we develop, and that you can sort of notice it in other places, rather than feeling like you just have to like wipe the slate clean and start over with everything. No, no, no. Just like start small right now. Start with Instagram with this one account. Don't even go through everybody you follow. Just
Mhm.
notice as you're scrolling, like, oh, oh, there it is again. I'm not ready for this. Mute. Like just do it as it's there. You don't have to like create some, again, it's like the decision making. You don't have to go through your entire thing. That's too many decisions to make. Just like do it
Mhm.
one at a time. I
Mhm.
love that question. It's a great question.
Okay, well, I feel like we're bumping up against time. So here's what I want to do. I want to hot seat you a little bit with kind of these last questions, because
Let's do it.
let's just see if we can run through them.
I'm ready.
Okay, so how are you going to lazy genius preparing your house in your decorations for the holidays?
Okay. So we already mentioned the nester. So she has taught me so beautifully to think more about winter than about Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's got a longer life, which is so lovely. It doesn't feel as frantic to try to make things Christmassy. And also, I love appealing to my senses. And so, this is something else that she has taught me, is that we often start with what we see, like all the decorations. But really, if you have a candle lit that smells like winter, and you're playing beautiful Christmas music that you love, and there's like cider on the stove, or something like, yeah, I don't know, like something that smells like Christmas to you, like some
Mm-hmm.
peppermint cookies baking or whatever, that like you look at your tree and it feels so beautifully like Christmassy and homey and warm and all those things. And you just have a tree up because you're paying attention to your other senses. And so I've been doing that for a couple of Christmases now, and it has been the best thing ever because it's less stuff, but it feels more like the holidays. And I love that.
Yeah, we had her on last Christmas. So
Mm,
we'll link to that episode in the show notes because she talked at length about all those things. So we'll link to
it's
that.
she's so good.
She is. She's so good. She's so great. Okay. How about meal planning and kind of maintaining the order in your home during the
Yeah.
holidays?
So I think that another principle in the Lazy Genius way is to live in your season. And I think that during the holiday season, to sort of fill in the blank when it comes to dinner and your home, to go, this is a season for whatever, and to give yourself permission to fill that in. So for us, this is a season for simple, repetitive meals because we're not really sure what's going to happen. I don't want a lot of food that's going to go bad. Maybe because a lot of our holiday gatherings might actually be kind of last minute based on numbers in your state or whatever it is. Like if you have got these elaborate meal plans or whatever, um, things are going to shift. And so this is a season for simple meals, or this is a season for maybe taking some things off some surfaces, not selling or figuring, just decluttering some surfaces a little bit so that things are easier to wipe off and clean, like, because stuff is the enemy of clean, like always. It's so much easier to clean a house that doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. So just to sort of, this is a season for, we're going to put away some of our stuff. So it's easier to kind of keep things feeling, tidy or whatever it is. So live in your season. This is a season for whatever, and then allow that to be your answer without any shame.
So helpful. It's really good. Yeah, we just did, Alex and I did like a top 10 ways to get ready for the holidays. And one of them was organizing. And I actually did it. Alex actually did it the other day with that high school student that I told you I was going to do. But we took everything out of the pantry and kitchen and completely like rearranged, changed drawers, like all the stuff you were talking about. Like I had another eye on someone who could tell me what was a better she's in high school or she just graduated from high school. I mean, I mean, just
Yeah.
any other eye is,
It
and
doesn't
she's
matter who the eye is.
no,
Right?
I mean, she's fabulous. But anyway,
That's
okay.
great.
How about you already talked about gift giving, but anything else to say about that?
I would say write it down. I think that I know for me, I'm like, oh, I'll just keep it in my head. Like I remember what I got for that person, and I never do, because so much stuff is online now that we forget what we clicked on to buy. And so I just have this little tiny notebook that I've had for a couple of Christmases. So that's also helpful because I look
Oh,
back at
yeah.
like what I gave the person before. There's no
Hmm.
system to it. It's just jotting down notes. But I find that to be incredibly helpful to write down when you buy something for somebody or an idea you had or that kind of thing. It makes you not like double buy or forget or last minute rushing around or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. On my notes in my phone, I keep an idea list for people, and that has been helpful too, that I can go back to as
And
throughout the year.
one of my favorite things about in terms of ideas for gifts, and this is not something I hear a lot, and so I always love a chance to say it, is I love giving gifts that are sorry, my kids, I don't know if you could hear that. My kid's timer for his reading group just went off on my phone. So I love giving gifts that honor a dream that that person has. I absolutely love to think like, what does this person talk about a lot? Or what's like something that they say with like whimsy in their eye? Or what is something that just gives them like so much pleasure that, whatever. I love to sort of think about surprising somebody with affirming and honoring a dream that they have. Which I know feels sort of like, I don't know. But when you start thinking about that and the people in your life, it's really sparkly. It's like a really
Hmm.
beautiful way to look at you're honoring the humanity in somebody else by the gift that you choose for them. And I just think that Christmas is such a lovely time to be able to do that on purpose. I love it so much.
Ah, that's beautiful. I like the way you phrase that a lot. It's really great. Okay, and last one, traditions.
Traditions are like, okay, we put so much pressure on traditions and we feel bad if we don't have enough of them.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, a tradition is just deciding to do something a second time and then
Hmm.
a third time. You just do something and you're like, oh, this is good. Let's try this again. So I think just taking the pressure off would be so helpful. But also, I think that I don't know if you guys are this way, but I often don't realize I have expectations about something until they are not met. I don't know that I had like very deep expectations of how someone was going to respond to something or how something was going to go until they don't respond that way. And I'm like, oh, wait, I thought something else was going to happen here. And
Mhm.
so I find personally, because traditions are, even the word feels so special, we
Mhm.
want to be families of traditions. We want to think, we want our kids to think fondly back on traditions that we have held, and we have this snapshot in our head of what those traditions look like, and if they don't look like that, then we think that they don't count or that they have failed or that they whatever. And so I think being super super honest about our expectations for traditions, like I remember one year, this is when you know that your expectation of tradition has gone bad. One year we were driving around with the kids looking at Christmas lights, as you do, and I yelled into the back seat. This is when they were tiny. They were tired. We went too late. It was my own fault, but I yelled into the back seat, "This is supposed to be fun." Like, this
Yeah.
is our Christmas light tradition. And it's not their fault that they're tired or
Mhm.
bored or they can't see from where their car seat position is, or it's not their fault. And so just to kind of relax on what our expectations are of things, that
Mhm.
what really matters, like name truly truly what matters. Maybe what matters is that we don't yell at each other when we're doing this
Mhm.
thing, or that we just remember that we're here to connect. And if it
Mhm.
rains or nobody has their lights on or we get lost, like it's okay. That's not what really
Mhm.
matters, that we're just being together. So I think remembering what matters, release the pressure, name your expectations, and be kind in the process.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we do put so much pressure on, we want to make a wonderful memory. And so the
So much, so
stress
many
of the
memories.
wonderful memory
Mhm.
makes us have terrible memories
Terrible
Mhm.
because then we're mom monsters
memories. Right.
or daughter-in-law monsters or whatever,
Yes, totally.
because we are wanting to make it so darn special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
I feel that energy so deeply where I'm like, do you know how hard I worked to make
mm,
you
Uh,
remember this, to make this special?
uh-huh.
And I just always, whenever I feel that energy kind of creep up my spine, I'm like, oh, step back, Kendra, step back. You
Mhm.
are definitely trying to be a genius about something that does not matter right now. You need
Mhm.
to stop.
Yeah.
mhm.
So
So good. All right. Well, Kendra, any last words for our listeners about the holidays?
I would highly encourage everyone, when you're scheduling all of your stuff and your tasks and whatever, is to schedule rest alongside it.
Mhm.
Because one of the reasons I think that we get tired, it's like December 17th and we're like, is this over yet? Because we have overscheduled ourselves. Now, it might feel like this is a season where that's not going to happen, but I still think we fill up our time, and we
Mhm.
feel compelled to fill up our time in November and December because it's like, well, it's special and we're supposed to be doing things and whatever. And so I just would like to encourage all of us, myself included, to schedule rest days where you don't go anywhere, you don't really do
Mhm.
anything. Maybe you watch a movie or whatever, but it's okay that every calendar box is not filled, that there's space in there. As a there's rest for the family, for the individuals in the family, for you as the person who might likely be running the family calendar in the first place, like just
Mhm.
to schedule rest.
Yeah, it's a good
Mhm.
word. Well, thank you, Kendra, and Merry Christmas to
Thank
you and
you.
your family.
Thank you for having me. This was a delight.
Yeah, we've loved it. All right. Have a great day.
You
Bye.
too.